Alright, it is time for the Trivia Minute, and here we go. The Black Sox Scandal was a game-fixing scandal in Major League Baseball in which 8 members of the Chicago White Sox were accused of intentionally losing the 1919 World Series against the Cincinnati Reds in exchange for payment from a gambling syndicate, possibly led by organized crime figure Arnold Rothstein. There is strong evidence both for and against Rothstein's involvement. However, there is no conclusive indication that the gambling syndicate's actions were directed by or involved organized crime. In response, the National Baseball Commission was dissolved and Judge Kennesaw Mountain Landis was appointed to be the first commissioner of baseball and given absolute control over the sport to restore its integrity. Despite acquittals in a public trial in 1921, Commissioner Landis permanently banned all 8 players from professional baseball. The Baseball Hall of Fame eventually defined the punishment as banishment from the consideration for the Hall, despite requests for reinstatement in the decades that followed, particularly in the case of Shoeless Joe Jackson. The ban remained in force for more than a century. In 2025, Commissioner Rob Manfred reinstated the Black Sox along with several other now deceased players. In 1919, Charles Kaminsky, the owner of the Chicago White Sox and a prominent Major League Baseball player from 1882 to 1894, was widely resented by his players for his miserliness. As a player, Kaminsky had taken part in Players' League labor rebellion in 1890 and long had a reputation for underpaying his players, even though they were one of the top teams in the league and had already won the 1917 World Series. Because of baseball's reserve clause, any player who refused to accept a contract was prohibited from playing baseball on any other professional team under the auspices of organized baseball. Players could only change teams with permission from their current team, and without a union, the players had no bargaining power. Kaminsky was probably no worse than most owners at the time. In fact, the White Sox had the largest team payroll in 1919. In the era of the reserve clause, gamblers could find players on many teams looking for extra cash, and they did. The White Sox clubhouse was divided into 2 factions. One group resented the more straight-laced players, later called the Clean Sox, a group that included players like second baseman Eddie Collins, a graduate of Columbia College of Columbia University, catcher Ray Shalak, and pitchers Red Faber and Dickie Carr. By contemporary accounts, the two factions rarely spoke to each other on or off the field, and the only thing they had in common was a resentment of Kaminsky. On September 18th, 1919, White Sox player Chick Gandil met with Joe Sport Sullivan, a Boston bookmaker, at the Hotel Buckminster near Fenway Park. The 2 men discussed plans to throw their upcoming series with the Cincinnati Reds for $80,000. 2 days later, a meeting of White Sox players, including those committed to going ahead and those just ready to listen, took place in Gandil's room at the Ansonian Hotel in New York City. Buck Weaver, the team's third baseman, was the only player to attend the meeting who did not receive money. Nevertheless, he was later banned along with the others for knowing about the fix and not reporting it. Although he hardly played in the series, utility infielder Fred McMullen heard about the fix and threatened to report the others unless he was in on the payoff. As a small coincidence, McMillan was a former teammate of the retired player William Sleepy Bill Burns, who had a minor role in the fix. Both had played for the Los Angeles Angels of the Pacific Coast League and Burns had previously pitched for the White Sox in 1909 and 1910. Star outfielder Shoeless Joe Jackson was mentioned as a participant but did not attend the meeting, and his involvement remains disputed. The scheme got an unexpected boost when the straight-laced Faber could not pitch due to getting sick with the flu. Years later, Schlack said the fix would not have happened if Faber had been available. According to Schlack, since Faber was the base of the staff, he would almost certainly have gotten starts that went instead to two of the alleged conspirators, pitchers Eddie Knuckles Cincanto and Lefty Williams. On October 1st, the day of Game 1, there were rumors amongst gamblers that the World Series was fixed, and a sudden influx of money being bet on Cincinnati caused the odds against them to fall rapidly. These rumors also reached the press box, where several correspondents, including Hugh Fullerton of the Chicago Herald and Examiner and ex-player and manager Christy Matheson, resolved to compare notes on any plays and players that they felt were questionable. However, most fans and observers were taking the series at face value. On October 2nd, the Philadelphia Bulletin published a poem which quickly proved to be ironic. Still, it really doesn't matter. After all, who wins the flag? Good, clean sports is what we're after, and we aim to make our brag. To each near or distant nation whereon shines the sporting sun, that of all our games gymnastic, baseball is the cleanest one. After throwing a strike with his first pitch of the series, Shinkati's second pitch struck Cincinnati's leadoff hitter Maury Raff in the back, delivering a prearranged signal confirming the player's willingness to go through with the fix. In the fourth inning, Sinat made a lousy throw to Swede Reinsberg at second base. Sports writers found the unsuccessful double play to be suspicious. Williams lost 3 games, a series record. Kerr, a rookie who was not part of the fix, won both of his starts. But the gamblers were now reneging on their promised progress payments to be paid after each game lost, claiming that all the money was let out on bets and was in the hands of the bookmakers. After Game 5, angry about the non-payment of promised money, the players involved in the fix attempted to double-cross the gamblers and won Games 6 and 7 of the best-of-9 series. Before Game 8, threats of violence were made on the gamblers' behalf against the players and family members. Williams started Game 8 but gave up 4 straight one-out hits for 3 runs before manager Kid Gleason relieved him. The White Sox lost Game 8 and the series on October 9th, 1919. Besides Weaver, the players involved in the scandal received $5,000 each, equivalent to $91,000 in today's money, with Scandal taking $35,000. Rumors of the fix dogged the White Sox throughout the 1920 season as they battled the Cleveland Indians for the American League pennant, and stories of corruption touched players on other clubs as well. At last, in September 1920, a grand jury was convened to investigate. Scholit confessed to his participation in the scheme to the grand jury on September 28th. On the eve of the final season series, the White Sox were in a vital tie for first place with the Indians. The Sox would need to win all 3 of their remaining games and then hope for Cleveland to stumble, as the Indians had more games left to play than the Sox. Despite the season being on the line, Kaminsky suspended the 7 White Sox still in the majors. Scandal had not returned to the team in 1920 and was playing semi-pro ball. He later said he had no choice but to suspend them, even though this action likely cost the Sox any chance of winning a second pennant. The Sox lost 2 of the 3 games in the final series against the St. Louis Browns and finished in second place, 2 games behind the Indians, who went on to win the 1920 World Series. The grand jury issued its decision on October 22nd, 1920, and 8 players and 5 gamblers were implicated. The indictments included 9 counts of conspiracy to defraud. The 10 players not implicated in the gambling scandal, as well as manager Kid Gleason, were each given $1,500 bonus checks by Kaminsky in the fall of 1920, the amount equivalent to the difference between the winners and losers' share for participating in the 1919 series. The trial commenced in Chicago on June 27, 1921, and was delayed by Judge Hugo Friend because 2 defendants, Ben Franklin and Carl Zork, claimed to be ill. Right Fielder Shano Collins was named as the wronged party in the indictment, accusing his corrupt teammates of having cost him $1,784 as a result of the scandal. Before the trial, key evidence went missing from the Cook County Courthouse, including the signed confessions of Surratt and Jackson, who subsequently recanted their confessions. Some years later, the missing confessions reappeared in the possession of Kaminsky's lawyer. On July 1st, the prosecution announced that Burns, who was under indictment for his part in the scandal, had turned state's evidence and would testify. During jury selection on July 11th, several members of the current White Sox team, including Gleason, visited the courthouse, chatting and shaking hands with the indicted ex-players. At one point, they even tickled Weaver, who was known to be quite ticklish. Jury selection took several days, but on July 15th, 12 jurors were finally impaneled in the case. Trial testimony began on July 18th when prosecutor Charles Gorman outlined the evidence he planned to present against the defendants. Here's the contemporaneous description from the New York Times. The spectators added to the bleachers' appearance of the courtroom, for most of them sweltering in shirt sleeves and collars were few. Scores of small boys jammed their way into the seats as Mr. Gorman told of the alleged sellout. They repeatedly looked at each other in awe, remarking under their breath, "What do you think of that?" or, "Well, I'll be darned." Kaminsky was then called to the stand and became so agitated with questions being posed by the defense that he rose from the witness chair and shook his fist at the defendant's counsel, Ben Short. The most explosive testimony began the following day on July 19th, when Burns admitted that members of the White Sox had intentionally fixed the 1919 World Series. Burns mentioned the involvement of organized crime figure Arnold Rothstein, among others, and testified that Colette had threatened to throw the ball clear out of the park if needed to lose the game. After additional testimony and evidence on July 28th, the defense rested and the case went to the jury. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours before returning verdicts of not guilty on all charges for all of the accused players. Long before the scandal broke, many of baseball's owners had nursed long-standing grievances with the way the game was then governed by the National Baseball Commission. The Black Sox Scandal and the damage it caused to the game's reputation gave owners the resolve to make significant changes to the governance of the sport. Their original plan was to appoint the widely respected federal judge and noted baseball fan Kennesaw Mountain Landis to head a reformed three-member commission comprising men unconnected to baseball. However, Landis made it clear to the owners that he would only accept an appointment as the game's sole commissioner, and even then only on the condition that he be granted essentially unchecked power over the sport. Desperate to clean up the game's image, the owners agreed to his terms and vested him with virtually unlimited authority over everyone in major and minor leagues. It was controversial at the time for Major League Baseball to move forward a single commissioner with sole governance on behalf of the owners. Upon taking office before the 1921 World Series, one of Landis's first acts as commissioner was to use his new power to place the 8 accused players on an ineligible list, a decision that effectively left them suspended indefinitely from all of organized professional baseball, although not from semi-pro barnstorming teams. Following their acquittals, Landis quickly quashed any prospect that he might reinstate the implicated players. On August 3rd, 1921, the day after the acquittals, Landis issued his own verdict. Regardless of the verdict of juries, no player who throws a ball game, no player who undertakes or promises to throw a ball game, no player who sits in confidence with a bunch of crooked ball players and gamblers, where the ways and means of throwing a game are discussed and does not promptly tell the club about it, will ever play professional baseball. Making note of a precedent that had previously seen Babe Borton, Harl Magert, Gene Dale, and Bill Rumler banned from the PCL for fixing games, Landis made it clear that all 8 accused players would remain on the ineligible list, banning them from organized baseball. The commissioner took the position that while the players had been acquitted in court, there was no dispute they had broken the rules of baseball, and none of them could ever be allowed back in the game if it were to regain its public trust. Kaminsky supported Landis by giving the 7 who remained under contract to the White Sox their unconditional release. Following the commissioner's statement, it was universally understood that all 8 implicated players were to be banned from Major League Baseball for life. 2 other players believed to be involved were also banned. One of them was Hal Chase, who had been effectively blackballed from the majors in 1919 for a long history of throwing games and had spent 1920 in the minors. Although it has never been confirmed, Chase was rumored to have been the go-between for Scandal and the Gamblers. Regardless of this, it was understood that Landis's announcement not only formalized his 1919 blacklisting from the majors, but barred him from minors as well. Landis, relying upon his years of experience as a federal judge and attorney, used this decision as the founding precedent of the reorganized majors for the Commissioner of Baseball to be the highest and final authority over baseball as an organized professional sport in the United States. He established a precedent that the league vested the commissioner with plenary powers and the responsibility to determine the fitness or suitability of anyone, anything, or any circumstances to be associated with professional baseball, past, present, and future. Landis banned the 8 members of the 1919 White Sox team from their involvement. Banned the following 8 members of the 1919 Chicago White Sox team for their involvement in the fix. Arnold Chick Gandol, first baseman, the ringleader of the players who were in on the fix. He did not play in the majors in 1920. He played semi-pro ball instead. In 1956, Sports Illustrated article, Gandol expressed remorse for the scheme. Still, he wrote that the players had actually abandoned the scheme when it became apparent they would not be watched closely. According to Gandol, the players' numerous errors resulted from fear of being watched. However, he conceded that the players deserved to be banned for talking to the gamblers. Eddie Sherratt, pitcher, admitted involvement in the fix. Oscar Happy Fletch, center fielder. Shoeless Joe Jackson, the star outfielder and one of the best hitters in the game, confessed in sworn grand jury testimony to having accepted $5,000 in cash from the gamblers. It was also Jackson's sworn testimony that he never met or spoke to any of the gamblers and was only told about the fix through conversations with other Sox players. The other participants informed Jackson that he would receive $20,000 cash divided into equal payments after each loss. Jackson testified that he played to win in the entire series and did nothing on the field to throw any of the games in any way. His roommate, pitcher Lefty Williams, brought $5,000 in cash to their hotel room after losing Game 4 and threw it down as they were packing to travel back to Cincinnati. This was the only money that Jackson received at any time. Jackson later recanted his confession and professed his innocence to no effect until his death in 1951. The extent of his collaboration with the scheme is hotly debated. Fred McMullen, utility infielder. McMullen would not have been included in the fix had he not overheard the other players' conversations. His role as the team scout may have had more impact on the fix since he saw minimal playing time in the series. Charlie Swelled Risberg, shortstop. Risberg was Gandel's assistant and the muscle of the playing group. He went 2 for 25 at the plate and committed 4 errors in the series. George Buck Weaver, third baseman. Weaver attended the initial meeting, and while he did not go in on the fix, he knew about it. In an interview in 1956, Gandel said that it was Weaver's idea to get the money up front from the gamblers. Landis banished Weaver on the basis, stating men associating with crooks and gamblers could expect no leniency. On January 13, 1922, Weaver unsuccessfully applied for reinstatement. Like Jackson, he continued to profess his innocence to successive baseball commissioners to no effect. Claude Wefty Williams, pitcher, went 0 for 3 with a 6.63 ERA for the series. Only one other pitcher in baseball history, reliever George Frazier in the 1981 New York Yankees, has ever lost 3 games in the World Series. The third game Williams lost was Game 8. Baseball's decision to revert to best-of-7 series in 1922 significantly reduced the opportunity for pitchers to obtain 3 decisions in a row. Also banned was Joe Gideon, second baseman for the St. Louis Browns, a friend of Risberg. Gideon learned about the fix from Risberg and placed bets on Cincinnati. He informed Kaminsky of the fix after the series to gain a reward. Instead, Landis banned him for life along with the 8 White Sox. The indefinite suspension imposed by Landis in connection to the scandal were the most suspensions of any duration to be simultaneously imposed until 2013, when 13 players were suspended for between 50 and 211 games in connection with the bogus doping scandal. The extent of Joe Jackson's part in the scheme remains controversial. He had a series-leading .37 batting average, including the series-only home run, threw out 5 base runners, and handled 30 chances in the outfield with no errors. In general, players perform worse in games their teams lose, and Jackson battled worse in 5 games that the White Sox lost with a batting average of 2.286 in losing games. There was still an above-average batting average. The National and American Leagues hit combined a .263 in the 1919 series. Jackson hit .351 for the season, 4th best in the major leagues. His .356 career batting average is the 4th best in history, surpassed only by Ty Cobb's, Oscar Charleston, and Roger Hornsby, each an NFL batting average leader. 3 of his 6 RBIs came in the losses, including the aforementioned home run and a double in Game 8 when the Reds had a significant lead and the series was all but over. Still, in that game, a long foul ball was caught in the fences with runners on second and third base, depriving Jackson of a chance to drive in the runners. One play in particular has been subject to scrutiny. In the 5th inning of Game 4, with a Cincinnati player on second, Jackson fielded a single hit to the left field and threw home, which was cut off by by Sarant. Scandal, another leader of the fix, later admitted to yelling at Sarant to intercept the throw. The run scored, and the Sox lost 2-0. Sarant, whose guilt is undisputed, made 2 errors in that 5th inning alone. Years later, all the implicated players said that Jackson was never present at their meetings with the gamblers. Williams, Jackson's roommate, later said they only mentioned Jackson in hopes of giving them more credibility with the gamblers. After being banned, Reinsberg and several other members of the Black Sox tried to organize a Free State barnstorming tour. However, they were forced to cancel these plans after Landis let it be known that anyone who played with or against them would also be banned from baseball for life. They then announced plans to play a regular exhibition game every Sunday in Chicago, but the Chicago City Council threatened to cancel the license of any ballpark that hosted them. With 7 of their best players permanently sidelined, the White Sox crashed into 7th place in 1921 and would not be a factor in the pennant race again until 1936. 5 years after Kaminsky's death, they would not win another American League championship until 1959, a then record 48-year gap, or another World Series until 2005, prompting some to comment about a curse of the Black Sox. Although many believe the Black Sox name to be related to the dark and corrupt nature of the conspiracy, the term Black Sox may already have existed before the fix. There is a story that the name Black Sox derived from Kaminsky's refusal to pay for the players' uniforms to be laundered, instead insisting that the players themselves pay for the cleaning. As the story goes, the players refused, and subsequently games saw the White Sox in progressively filthier uniforms as dirt, sweat, and grime collected on the white woolen uniforms until they took on a much darker shade. Kaminsky then had the uniforms washed and deducted the laundry bill from the players' salaries. On the other hand, Elliot Ansoff, in his book 8 Men Out, makes no such connection, mentioning the filthy uniforms early on, but referring to the term Black Sox only in connection with the scandal. And that was the Trivia Minute, and now let's get back to the shows.
Thank